hate, I'm defying. Hard labor, I came here to modify the system. Take them down if they ain't listening. Straight demolition. From young, everything resistant. Good times, I don't really miss them. Gotta pay the cost, no tick. Wick, this hard labor and I'm kicked. Never fit in with the crowd or got into politics. You can tell I'm built different. Trust me, it'll be a sequence of events if you touch me. Even when the women do it love. I've been eye to eye with great people, but you'll be mistaken if you put another one above. Hello everyone, welcome to This Week in Tyranny, the most hardcore news show on earth. I am your host Conrad Rogas. Today is Sunday, April 28th. 2024. It's episode 73. And on episode 73, we're going to let him have it with this one. We're talking about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. The Florida Wildlife Corridor is a program of buying land and putting restrictions on it so that humans can't use the land, to keep the land supposedly in a wild and primordial condition, to protect the animals, to make sure they can have genetic diversity, all this stuff. Not going to get too deep into it because they're going to tell you themselves. Of course, I'm going to present primary sources. You can hear it from them. And this is about, I'm going to talk about Florida, but it's not exclusive to Florida because wildlife corridors are an environmental concept. It's a global concept related to climate change, sustainability, and conservation, right? Which means it's worldwide, and specifically the corridors are a United Nations idea. So it comes from the United Nations. It's not limited to the United States. It's not limited to Florida. But I'll focus on Florida to tell this story. And the way it works is that the people who own the land out in the country, the ranchers, the farmers, the fishermen, right, they get paid off by the government. It's called a conservation easement. Conservation easement means they get paid for their land, but they don't sell the land. They're still the land owners. They still continue to live there, right, and work there. But what they're selling is their right to build. They're selling their rights, their property rights. The right to build, to expand, to develop their land, to improve it, right? Or to sell it to a business. And this is for perpetuity, meaning that it's permanent. It's permanent. It stays with the land, okay? It's like a reverse indentured servitude. But before I get into this, I want to clear up a misconception that I noticed as I prepared this show. I know people are going to have about this. The word corridor sounds like we're talking about like a strip of land. A corridor is like a hallway, right? Like meaning a key piece of land, right? Like a key passage, a small strip of land, something that's very, like a small, like a river or a passage or a bridge that's necessary for animals to live, right? That's not the case here. Their use of the word corridor here, it actually means all the land that's not in the city, all rural land. It's a land grab, and it's a scheme, and I'm going to prove it. And the best way to prove it is to look at these maps here, these two pictures. One is of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. They're areas that are priority levels 1, 2, and 3. And the best thing to do is to contrast this with a map of Florida cities. This is basically the map of the lights at night. This is how you can tell where the people are, where the population is. And you see that it's essentially one is a negative of the other, right? Everything that's not the city, everything that's not Miami, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Pensacola, the Tampa, right? Everything that's out of these metropolitan areas is marked with colors with green and yellow as the wildlife corridor. And with Florida, it's very easy to see this. Okay, it's a great example. But I'll play a recording of a government employee saying that directly, that everything outside of the city is the wildlife corridor, and therefore, the government should have the rights to it. But that'll be at the end of the video. I want to start by breaking down a video called Saving the Florida Wildlife Corridor by National Geographic. But first, let's read the description, because that'll introduce it well, right? Let's talk about what this actually is. Let's let them present to us what it is, right? Protecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, a statewide network of public preserves and private working lands. So, network of public preserves and private working lands. It's a network of public land buying private land, not outright, not taking over and expanding pink slips and they get the land. But through the corridor program, these private owners, they sign over their rights to the land
but continue to work on it. So technically they own it. But when they sell their land to the government, they're selling their rights to develop. And this lasts forever. Okay? I mentioned that in the beginning. Which means that after these people die, no one else can expand on that land. Essentially, the government takes it over. See, after one of these farmers or ranchers die, and the property goes to their children, well, their children can't expand or develop their land, so they don't have an opportunity to make money unless they spend their entire lives doing exactly what their parents did and just work there like that. Which, you know, some people do that. Some people can do that. But most people won't do that lifelong labor. So essentially what's going to happen is the government gets full ownership of the land in the next generation. They'll just give them another payment. Whereas if the farmer or rancher wouldn't have sold their rights to develop away, the children could either expand the land, right, use it differently, whatever they want to do with it, or they could sell the property to a business. The business would not only pay them more, but actually use it for production, for something that actually does something, right? And I'm going to have to defend the business world on this. I'm going to do a whole rant about this because people have this view of the world that business like stands across from the ring against the people, the working man, and they don't care about anybody, like it's a chessboard, right? It's them versus business. The business world makes all the money, and the corporations don't care about anybody, and I have to interact with them to be able to put food on the table just to survive. And it's a fallacy because regular everyday people and the business world are actually on the same side of this chessboard. See, we have something in common with 95% of the companies that are out there. 95% of CEOs are actually just like you. And what we have in common is that the government is fucking us and they're taking our money. And the government puts all these pointless regulations on us that make our life harder. That's us and business, right? What else? The government will take our way of life away if we don't play by their rules. That's you and any business owner that you pull from the street. That's almost all of them. But what there is like this top 5%, 5 or 3 or 1, it doesn't matter. There's this top 5% that is the enemy side. The big corporations, the multinational corporations. They're the ones who get the huge government help, and they essentially act like government. You know, we're talking about like Apple or Google or the electric and gas companies. And the thing that is interesting about them is big monopolies are created always only with government help. There's no such thing as the free market creating a monopoly. It always happens with the government crushing their competitors. It's a partnership, right? It's like the mob, okay? The mob has these partnerships like with business owners and about territory and all this stuff. It never actually happens in capitalism. It's a fallacy and a mistake to think of Standard Oil or Google as big business. It's not really the world of business. It's the world of government and rulership. It's their cronies. It's the cronies of the king doing business together, scheming and doing criminal conspiracy to take the people's money away and securing that with the use of force. And these huge corporations like Amazon and weapons manufacturers and these multinational asset managers like BlackRock, they are actually funding and advancing the agendas of the government. They're not out there just for the money. Like, it's not, oh, cash is king, right? All about the bottom line. They're not doing that. They're spending money to push these agendas because they're on the same team. So, but what has happened is that people in their minds have got this idea of the business world being like that top 5%, and they think that's what money and corporations is. People are very anti-money. People are very anti-business because they don't have money, and you know, and I don't either. You know, I'm not rich either, but you know, I don't get emotionally involved just because I got the short end of the stick in life. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna cry about it and whine about it. I'm not gonna ignore the truth, but not to do a whole another rant about that. The business world is not like that top 5%, that government corporate partnership world. That's a lie. There is a 95% of business. Most people who have businesses are just out there living life. They're not, yeah, sure, they're not out there fighting for freedom. They're not out there crusading for justice or helping the needy or saving the world, but neither are you, right? Let's be honest, most of the people who are seeing this video are not fighting for some noble cause either, right? And that's fine. But let's just chill out about this idea of moral superiority. Like it's dirty to make money. Like they're greedy for doing that. Like the guy that makes 500K a year is somehow worse than you because what? Because he gets paid a lot. Why? And the idea that you're better than somebody who makes a lot of money, you're not. You're just looking out for yourself and your family, and so are they. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this is a fallacy. And another fallacy that I have to address that has to do with this corridor is this idea that the world of industry and production destroys the environment, and that's the way it's always going to be. It's not. And it's also a fallacy that development, like human development and expansion, means environmental destruction. It doesn't. The free market, as it runs, it encourages new technologies, right? I think we can all agree that that's a fact. The free market tends to produce new technologies, which means how to produce more with fewer raw materials. So it's actually the world of business and money making that will long term benefit the world, benefit the earth and the animals in the long term. And the example I want to use for this is my business, construction. All structures used to be built with like real wood, real dense wood. None of this shit right here. The real 2x4 studs, 2 inches by 4 inches thick wood. If you ever do demolition on an old house, you're gonna find that shit real hard to cut down. That's a lot of trees to chop down to build those houses, right? They were also very solid. Now, in the 1930s, steel framing was introduced. And now all commercial buildings, all stores, right, all even my building is built with steel framing. There's no wood in here. And all commercial buildings are built with metal studs, no wood in them. And it's funny because in a funny way, only residential homes today are built with wood. So what? So the selfish and greedy corporations, right? The selfish, greedy corporations, they're actually doing the thing that chops down fewer trees. But not because they care. It's only because the free market, the profit motive, directs that practice. So that's one example of the profit motive that is so selfish, right? That's so bad. Well, that actually helps the environment because people want to do the cheapest thing. They want to use the cheapest material. And that works, right? That's a nice natural system that works, just like natural law. So you're going to see that the free market principles align with moral principles, and people hate that. People hate that. They don't want to live in that world, but that's the world you're living in if you open your eyes to it. So, metal framing. Now, in 1964, the 2x4s, they stopped being actually 2x4. They got smaller. And 2x4s today, when you go buy them at Home Depot, they're 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So, and that's not because anybody was thinking about the effects of deforestation. They weren't. But it's just to compete with the alternatives in the industry, right? So the amount of wood used in construction decreased by 35%. Not by government decree, not by guidance of an environmental committee, but because of capitalism. And in capitalism, you have to keep reducing costs to compete. And reducing costs means reducing the raw materials needed and the resources needed. And creating new technology to use resources more effectively. Okay, that's another example. Another example is decks. Decks used to be made out of wood. Today we use composite wood. The decks that I built do, we do a lot of vinyl flooring as opposed to hardwood flooring as well. And you even have plastic lumber, and you can use PVC material replacing wood. Baseboards, you could use PVC, all this stuff. And again, you see this playing out. The free market tends towards cleaner living, actually. And it's the same way in psychology, and it's the same way in philosophy. Honest living tends toward health. When you don't have regrets and you don't have repressed emotions, right? Things like shame and guilt, then you have less cancer, you have less chronic diseases. Okay, that's psychology for you. And in philosophy and morality, it's the same way. Freedom tends towards morality. right? Because the more you live freely and let others live freely, the better and kinder people are to each other, and to animals. And that's how it goes in the philosophical world. And in the material world, capitalism and progress tends toward environmental health. There's just an article I read last night that they're actually coming up with, they're actually coming out with the hydrogen combustion engine that was supposed to be a conspiracy. That Stanley Meyer invented the water fuel cell battery, but now they've got direct hydrogen injections. They're going to use it in race cars first, and the reason they're coming up with that is because they're going to find a way to it's going to come out slowly. You can't keep technology down, but it's not going to revolutionize the combustion engine paradigm. They're still going to go towards electric, but that hydrogen power is there, and the reason I make that point is that you can power cars with water. And if we would just keep progressing, not drive less, not build more bike lanes, not go away from progressing, don't cover your eyes and be scared. You go further to develop cleaner technologies, and we could all be driving cars that you pour water into, and that's your fuel. And then the exhaust fumes from the car are actually oxygen. That's fucking technology. That's what we can do. Okay? So people get really mad about this. Capitalism tends towards helping the environment, and the reason you don't understand that is because there's a transitional period where that connection cannot be seen. It's just like raising children. When you're raising a child and you think you've done everything right, you're doing the right things, you're feeding them the right things, and your child might just keep acting up and being mean. And you think to yourself, like, man, what am I doing wrong? What is wrong with me? Why are they acting like this? Am I a bad mom or a bad dad? No, it's a transitional period. You have to keep moving forward and investing in your child. And after the growing pains are done, all the work will pay off. That's how shit goes. That's how it goes with growth. That's how it goes with progress and technology and the environment. It's going to be rough in the middle. That's where humanity is now. We're in the middle. We're in a transitional period. But afterwards, it'll be much better than it was before. And that's how it is having children, right? The young people, they get together and everything is fine. Like their lives are fine, but there's something missing. You want something more. You want to experience something wonderful, right? So people get together and they have children. And then when you do, you have big problems. You have huge worries and issues. But over time, after those issues are resolved, it is the most rewarding thing. And things are much better than they have ever been before. That's your reward for work and progress. That's how nature works. That's why we are here. It's not a simulation in the sense that, oh my God, what the fuck are we going to do? Life doesn't matter. No, it matters. It matters. You have these amazing experiences, but you're supposed to put in the effort to do that. Now, being green and sustainable, like actually helping or actually living in accordance with nature and the environment, right, in harmony and mutual benefit, that only happens at the extremes. Never in the transitional period. The transitional period is the time to get your hands dirty and how they say you got to crack some eggs to make an omelet. Meaning there are two things you can do. You can either have nothing, you can use up no resources and don't pollute the earth at all. Like my friend Dan, you meditate in a shed, and I love him. I mention him because I really appreciate him, as a friend and like a brother to me. But he can live that way because he's one with God, and that's the best way he can help others. He's living his life good. The rest of us can't do that. We need to own property and experience stuff in order to be happy and to help others. And we need to go through this transitional period, through this cosmic adolescence of consuming stuff and polluting stuff to progress and develop and learn from our mistakes and come out the other side a more advanced holistic being. And now, instead of just sitting in a shed, I can build a huge harmonic shed with Schumann resonance and sacred geometry, and I can meditate there and go into new areas to experience unity with God. Not to sit there and be separate from God like in a crystal palace, no. Right? So so you can either own nothing and be happy, and it's funny because that's actually a true statement. That's actually true, not in the way that Klaus Schwab meant it, of course, but it's true. When you don't get entangled with the world and you don't have to worry about maintaining all this property, then it doesn't weigh you down, and you can just be light and weightless, and you can own nothing and be happy. Or you choose to get entangled with the world. You take on all this stuff, you work through the obstacles, and get to a place where you improve yourself and make the world a less harsh place to get entangled with for future generations, so that it can be easier for them, right? That's what Christ did. He got entangled. He was in a state of oneness, and he left the state of oneness and incarnated on earth to help those who are in suffering. And I'm not saying that Jesus Christ is like a Fortune 500 CEO, right? Because I'm making that parallel, or that he preached capitalism. I'm not saying that. I'm not engaging in blasphemy or anything like that. But I am saying that truth, and therefore freedom, is the way to the Father. And the reality is, hey, none of us are Christ anyway. But to walk in his footsteps, we should get entangled with the world. So if you are capable, don't withdraw into prayer and meditation. If you can, if you're healthy and you're able, get yourself in order and compete in the world. Like, compete, get in the game, and demand to be treated well. Show that with your actions, and take what you deserve from life. Well, not taking it away from people, but take it from life. Take the opportunities. Don't let this shit pass you by. And as long as you're being moral, meaning you don't take things away from people, then you're going to make the world better than it was before. And that's my rant about business. We're not even through the first sentence yet of the description. So, protecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, a statewide network of public preserves and private working lands, provides an opportunity to balance Florida's rapid growth with the green infrastructure that supports all Floridians. I emphasize provides an opportunity. It's funny. It's like saying, hey, we got a chance. We're going to take this land. So you're going to see that, again, the opportunity. But balance Florida's rapid growth with the green infrastructure. Curious use of the word balance, because it's not to balance, but curtail, to decrease. You can't balance. It's like, would you like to balance some of your money with some of these nice products? No, stop talking shit. You have to spend money to get those products. You have to give it up. You have to sacrifice. It's not balancing growth with infrastructure. There is no balancing growth with green infrastructure. All this does is it provides the opportunity to stop growth, to stop human growth, to stop building homes, to stop building businesses. And my question is, stop growth and replace it with what? Green infrastructure, which is what? It's anything that doesn't produce. That's what green infrastructure means to them. It doesn't mean that they're going to build, a more advanced, environmentally clean factory or a townhouse that's clean that would replace the would-be townhouse. It means the land's going to sit there. It's going to sit there to never be used, owned by the government, where they could limit transportation. They could put all these restrictions. If they do put anything there, it will be low output. But more importantly, it's to ensure that people are limited and tied down to the cities, packed in the cities, and fall under the jurisdiction and the direction of urban development, right? Which means what? It means Agenda 21. It means mixed use. It means rationing of resources, dishing out however many resources, For all my old Polish audience, it's the pieces of paper coming back for food. Rationing of resources, that reduction of carbon emissions, and electronic integration, which means surveillance. For the old generation, that's new to you. You don't even know what that looks like yet, but it's coming. It's just a new version. It's fucking Stalin 2.0. I'm going to continue with the description. Protecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, a statewide network of public preserves and private working lands, provides an opportunity to balance Florida's rapid growth with the green infrastructure that supports all Floridians. Through the voices of farmers, fishermen, ranchers, and conservationists, the film offers a glimpse into one of America's most unique and complex conservation opportunities. So, farmers, fishermen, ranchers, and conservationists. Farmers, fishermen, and ranchers That's really one group of people in this case. They're the property owners. See, they list 4 different groups to make it seem like it's really a partnership and it's really like a round table of people coming together. You know, coming together like whatever the show is where the Voltron coming together and making the, yes, or Power Rangers. But it's not like that. It's not really a partnership. It's 2 groups of people. It's the people who are getting bought out by the state and the people who are working on behalf of the state. Okay? So this is, you know, you could catch this stuff. The way they use language just sets me off. Because it's bullshit. They're bullshitting you. These are just like talkers. These are like scammers. Have you been seeing the videos on YouTube? Like on YouTube, I turn off personalized ads, so I get the ads that everybody else is getting. And there are so many scams that are advertised. And this is how they talk. And people, maybe they notice those scams, but they don't notice the big government scams. Okay. Protecting the Florida Wildlife Corridor, a statewide network of public preserves and private working lands, provides an opportunity to balance Florida's rapid growth with the green infrastructure that supports all Floridians. Through the voices of farmers, fishermen, ranchers, and conservationists, the film offers a glimpse into one of America's most unique and complex conservation opportunities and highlights the need to collaborate to ensure its survival. And I had to point that out because the word collaborate makes me laugh, because collaborators are a word that historically is used to describe people who worked with totalitarian regimes, like Nazi collaborators. The definition of wartime collaboration, one of the definitions of collaborate, is to work with an enemy against one's own country. And is that not what's happening? Is that not what this is? And I'm not saying that the use of that word is intentional. It isn't, but isn't it funny that they don't use the word cooperate, right? That all the time when you do something, when you pay your taxes or anything, or they're talking about you wearing masks, they use the word cooperate. But here they use the word collaborate. A bunch of collaborators. And that's what it is. So that's the description. I'm going to play the video, but before I do, I got to make it clear that the people you're going to see here, most of the people that are working for environmentalism and conservation, they don't know about the real intentions of the plan. They don't understand what it's going to do. They don't know what I know. They don't know what's in the history books. They are not in on it, and they don't have to be. And that's one of the key messages, the key points of the message of This Week in Tyranny in general, is that almost no one understands what they're a part of. They don't know. For the most part, there is no evil group of people making all these plans. They don't know. It's 99% idiots. Idiots and people who are lost. So here you go. I'm going to play the video. I'm going to play a portion of it, the middle of it, so you could see the important stuff.
We as Floridians have a unique opportunity to build on an incredible legacy of conservation. 27% of Florida is public land. But the thing is, that's not enough. We've done a tremendous job over the past 50 years in setting the pace for conservation in Florida. And now we need to finish that journey because we're fighting a tremendous onslaught of development. 100,000 acres a year lost to housing, into roads, into shopping malls. By 2070, if development continues at the same pace, we're projected to lose 5 million acres of rural and natural land in the state of Florida. And that's nearly all the missing links in the Florida Wildlife Corridor. If we don't protect the corridor now, most of our state parks and national parks are going to be islands surrounded by development. And that's not a world I want my kids to inherit.
27% of Florida is public land, but the thing is, that's not enough. So we're off to a good start with this guy, right? We have someone clearly indicating that government-owned land is good, and that's the goal, and that privately owned land, therefore, is bad. Yeah? And what percentage is enough? 100%, right? because that's what it is, right? And this is what fucking communists look like in 2024. This is who's gonna bring in the next Goldomor. The next, what was the last time a nation of hundreds of millions of people tried to bring in a major reorganization of land and natural resources? Stalin's famines. That's what it was. 5 to 9 million Russians dead from 1930 to 1933. 5 million Ukrainians dead in 1 year from 1932 to 1933. Look it up. Environmentalism is a mutated version of Marxism. Instead of the people that they talk about sacrificing for, instead of the common man and the working man and the farmers, now it's the animals and nature, right? The mask has changed. The structure and the plan has stayed the same. You're looking at what's going to cause starvation in America, dead bodies in America. You can't even imagine that, right? What else does he say? We're fighting a tremendous onslaught of development. 100,000 acres of housing, roads, and shopping malls. You know, using this kind of language, onslaught is a military term. And again, this is revolutionary language, just like communism. They're fighting a tremendous onslaught of human development. Well, again, that's very honest and direct, like the technocrats. They're at least honest, and I appreciate it. And more people should listen to these people, because they're telling you it's a war against you. I didn't say that. He said that. And this guy, he wouldn't hurt a fly, right? He can't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. But by preaching this to people and letting this happen, you're gonna bring in the next fucking famine. This is gonna happen if people just let it happen. And the real onslaught is this United Nations agenda. It's the bike lanes, the parking for electric cars. You can't go to a parking garage in this city without going fucking a whole floor down, because all of the parking is for electric cars, preferential parking for electric, right? I was at Whole Foods the other day, and I see it. The hatred for men, that's what it is. White men especially. And not that I'm any sort of crusader for white men. I'm not. I think most of you are bitches. I think you've gotten yourself into this position in the world, in your own country, by being too nice, too timid, and too fucking quiet. That's what's happened. And I know this because I have that tendency as well of being too nice. I used to be too nice. And often I still will be a little bit quiet. Right? I'll let some shit slide that I really shouldn't. And finally, this guy says that, and that's not a world I want my kids to inherit. Right? The world of being surrounded by suburbs. No, he wants his kids to inherit the world of rationed meat, right? Rationed food and water, right? Because these people are abusive parents. Actually, it's abuse through absenteeism. Supporting these agendas that are robbing your children of the future, of the freedom that you were handed. What you were handed, those gifts, you're taking it away, right? You're nowhere to be seen in fighting for the future of your children. Where is the mental nourishment that you're supposed to provide your kids with? Because if you don't feed your kids, you go to fucking prison. But how many parents don't feed their children's minds? Almost fucking all of them. Yeah? But this guy's light work compared to the next guy, the 4th to 6th generation Florida rancher.
I'm a 6th generation Florida rancher. Our family moved down here in middle 1850, brought their cattle with them. My dad saw the change. He saw that people were going to move here and we couldn't stop them. He always said, you know, people don't come here to see a subdivision. They come here to see our scenic landscape. I mean, once you start checkerboarding developments in there, you're not going to be able to stop it then. If we were surrounded on all 4 sides of development, it would be hard to ranch. The ranching business is not the most profitable business there is. So there's other things you gotta learn how to do and keep your land intact. You'll find if you can keep your ranch, do a conservation easement, you'll find a way to make a living on it.
The sixth generation Florida ranchers, you know, my daddy bought this farm in 1850. And he says this shit like people didn't come here to see a subdivision. So arrogant. And he's shilling the payments is the worst thing. He's encouraging selling out. If you keep your ranch and get a conservation easement, you'll find a way to make a living. You know, this dude is so fucking soft. He wears a cowboy hat and he has a country accent, but what's inside of that is a city boy pushover pussy. And he talks about the city folks moving to Florida as if he has some sort of a claim to it, like our serene landscape. No, like he has some sort of respect or tradition. He doesn't. He sold his rights to the land. He's smaller than any of those soccer moms in those retirement homes there. You're not a man. You sold the rights to your property and you stayed on the land like a little fucking scalded dog, you fucking coward. And he talks about conservation easement. What a condescending word, an easement. It's like it's a pat on the head. That's what this guy is. He's a little dog, right? He's a little loyal dog to these people. And look, what you do with your property is your business, but not only are you endorsing this parasitic expansion, you come on with this high and mighty arrogance. And that's what sets me off. You know, put me in front of him and give him his cattle whip, and I'll strangle him to death with it. I promise. I'm so glad they put him as a representation of who is part of this selling out campaign. It's any dime a dozen country ass pussy boy, daddy's boy. That's who he is. You know, condescending towards city people moving to Florida, please. You know, they're going down there for the freedom and spirit that you talk about. You're supposed to represent that, but you don't have it. You can't talk down to them. They got more balls than you. They left their land to live in a better place. You sold your land to stay there and die for nothing. You know? It's like people who talk to me about being an immigrant. Like, no offense, but I don't support immigration. Shut the fuck up, pussy. Think about it. Who's more American than me, than this week in tyranny, right? I'm ready to die today for this shit. And not only that, I do the everyday work to fight for this country's blood, body, and spirit. And that goes for Poland too, right? Patrick Henry, Thomas Paine, I'm cut from their cloth. You keep paying those taxes, you're endorsing the enemy, yeah? Well, let's chill out with all that American shit.
One of the tools we have is conservation easements. Conservation easements are a legacy tool because it means that as a landowner, you have put restrictions on that land that last forever. You give up your development rights, and it helps the landowner because they receive payment for those rights that they give up. You know, we're seeing more and more conversion, we call it, from timber to development. That's concerning. But most of the neighbors that we have are just as determined as we are to not develop.
So, now, this next nice lady, she talks about this land buying plan being a legacy tool. As I've said, it puts restrictions on the land that last forever. You give up your development rights and you receive payment for the rights you give up. I very much appreciated how direct and honest this was. Now, you know, she was the best of the three for me to listen to. Very honest, you know. Thank God for women in this world, right? And she says, determined to not develop. You know, that's such a fucked up phrase because human beings that are determined to not develop, we call those people mentally ill. In any other context, that's mental illness. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's how we do things. Like if you're determined to never become potty trained, right? Or to never learn how to shake hands, you'd be considered mentally ill by society. And you can say, oh, that's a different meaning of the word. It's not the same thing. Sure, yeah, but language matters. And we are supposed to We are supposed to grow and develop land just like we're supposed to grow and develop our bodies. That metaphor is applicable here. So determined not to develop is determined to die. That's what it is. So that's that video. That's saving the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And the next video is the smoking gun admission that I talked about. That this is a criminal takeover, and this has to do with all of the land, not some of the land, but all of the land. It's from a video called Shared Vision for a Robust and Resilient Florida Wildlife Corridor. They meet together. This is from a conference. It's by the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation. You can hear it for yourself.
And I describe the wildlife corridor sometimes, and people ask me, well, define the wildlife corridor. And I said, well, Google a map of the state of Florida at nighttime. You'll see the beautiful lights around the city you live in. Everywhere it's dark on that map is the wildlife corridor. It's where our aquifer gets recharged, it's where your food gets grown, and it's where our animals traverse the state. And we're very proud of that. And so we're going to continue to work not only with the secretary and his department, which has been amazing, but all of our local basin boards, ELAMP programs, the federal government, to make sure we're making use of those federal dollars and stretching our dollars.
The Wildlife Corridor is the entire area of the map that isn't lit up at night, meaning all land outside of the city, and that's a direct and brazen claim of government to all agricultural land. It's about agriculture. They're trying to control where the food grows. And this is straight up Stalinism coming from employees of the United States government, right? Sean Hamilton, Secretary, Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Julie Rathmel, Executive Director of Audubon, Florida. Wilton Simpson, Commissioner of Agriculture of the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Government employees, these people, right? So look, week after week I'm calling out people by name that based on the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, any other country's national constitution worth anything, or any religious text worth anything for that matter, based on any affirmation of rights at all, these are people that could be considered direct enemy combatants according to American principles. So I'm gonna just be super clear. I ain't with the talking. Like, I never had ambitions to talk to people and preach to people and teach people. I'm not from the breed that puts the suits on and gets in front of the camera. That's not my world. I'm from a world where if I don't want you around me, you don't stay around. I like to be left alone. And if you go around disrespecting me, talking like you're going to do something to me, threatening me, and let's be clear, that's what these people are doing. Yeah? I'm not overreacting about what they're saying. He states that the corridor contains the land where the aquifer refills, which means where the water is, where all the food grows, all the land. Look, the FDA already controls what you can and cannot eat. And really the only reason I'm not dead or in prison right now is because people like this stay out of my everyday life. They stay out of my life. And since these people don't actually force anyone to do anything, they just talk. It's like a game of telephone, It's just like, hey, do this. So I then, because of that, don't have a solid justification to go out and have a fireside chat with them. Well, I'm not with the talking. I don't tolerate disrespect and threats. It would be much easier for me to give up my life for a righteous reason than to go out like a coward and continue to live in this type of world quietly and have to, back down from a fight and live the rest of my life, try to live that down. No, I don't want that. And the reason I'm cocky like that is because I know at the end of the day, I'm more willing to risk and drop everything. I'm more willing to risk everything than the people I'll be up against. That's why I'm confident. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the most accurate shooter. But boy, I will make sure that doing anything to me comes at a high fucking premium cost. High fucking cost. And it'll cost much more than it's worth. And that's your best defense. That's your best weapon that we have. Not an AR-15. It's your speech, but it's your willingness to risk. It's your willingness to be immovable and resilient in your principles. Okay? And the reason I say all this, right, it's not to It's not to like be big and posture and you know, just like I want to say all this. I want to let my very personal side come out because I know that I'm not the only person like this. And when people like me hear this, my hope is that they will feel that it is very real and that it is okay to let that out. And when that happens, y'all elitist talking ass motherfuckers got y'all hands full. That's the point. And speaking of people who talk a lot but are fake as fuck, a certain governor, he passed the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act. That would be big Mr. Ron DeSantis. On July 19, 2021, he dedicates $300 million to the Wildlife Corridor Act. I'll link it, of course. I find this stuff week after week after week, and you can see it. And this is in addition to the $100 million already allocated to the Florida Forever program. The Florida Forever program is a land acquisition program, one of the largest in the country, that replaced the P2000 program. I'm just letting you know in case this is an area of research for you, you know, you could find all this. So, Corridor Act, Section 5, duties of the department. The department shall encourage investment in conservation easements voluntarily entered into by private landowners to conserve opportunity areas. Okay, I've said this. I'm just giving you proof. Consider the inclusion of private funds to supplement the state's contribution in its efforts to acquire a fee or less than fee interest in lands that contain recognized opportunity areas and conserved lands in the Florida Wildlife Corridor. I want to highlight private funds. So they're talking about corporations. They're not talking about taxpayer money. So this is what I talked about. This is that top 5% of corporations that are entangled with government and pushing their agendas. Right? More about that. Section G, encourage new approaches and novel financing mechanisms for long-term protection of the Florida Wildlife Corridor, including but not limited to public-private partnerships, payments for ecosystem services, blended financing for growth, resilience, and green infrastructure, and support for the sustainable growth of agriculture. Public-private partnerships. It's the same thing that's building these homes for the migrants that I was talking about and for the homeless in Chicago. Public-private partnerships. Why is JP Morgan doing this? Well, because JP Morgan is not out there just looking out for profits. It's out there looking for power, for control, right? They're in the same club. And there you go. And this is just to show you that it's in effect, right? And DeSantis, this guy's supposed to be pro-America, right? This guy's supposed to be anti-globalist, and he's all over it. And as a matter of fact, you should see it for yourself.
Then we've got a lot of people here from the conservation community, ranchers, cattle, all kind of stuff. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for attending. We're here to highlight the state's effort to preserve our environment through land acquisition and conservation, and to ceremonially sign SB 976, which establishes the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act.
And that's for all the conservatives. You're way behind. Yes, he can sign the abortion bills, and he can sign the bills. Okay, no more drag queen story time. Oh, DeSantis is standing up for the children, right? The trans bills, the bathroom bills. And I'm not saying he's a bad or evil guy, right? I'm not talking about his integrity or his moral character, but I'm just saying he lacks the knowledge. This guy doesn't know this. He doesn't even know what he's talking about, and you can see him reading off the page. You can see him reading off the page. He doesn't even know who's there. He doesn't know what this is. And I'm going to link the video in the description so you could see it for yourself. Again, DeSantis and Trump, they don't know shit about the real agenda here. All they know is you don't touch United Nations stuff. You don't touch land conservation. You don't touch their agendas. Okay? They know. That's not their area to do anything in. Right? Which is why you shouldn't vote for them. This is getting old. Stop being dumb. And I'm going to talk about the United Nations now. The United Nations has some of the best public images in the world. Like, their public relations work is incredible. You try to tie them to anything, and to tie them to these wildlife corridors, you'll find it very difficult. Because they don't announce it loudly. They don't announce it directly. So, here's an article from eos.org. EOS is the Greek goddess of the dawn. Interesting, right? Eastern Star, the dawn. But EOS is the magazine of the American Geophysical Union, titled Bill Would Create a Wildlife Corridor System to Protect Species. And they say in this article, in the wake of a recent United Nations report about threats to biodiversity, congressional legislation aims to protect wildlife that faces habitat loss, degradation, and fragmentation. Quote, new legislation to establish a national system of wildlife corridors in the United States comes just days after a United Nations report on threats to biodiversity warned that about 1 million species worldwide are threatened with extinction. The legislation, known as the Wildlife Corridor Conservation Act of 2019, would establish the wildlife corridor system to help native animal and plant species, including protected species that face habitat loss, degradation, fragmentations, or obstructions to connectivity between habitat areas. So, let's look at that United Nations report. Well, you can't really find it. Why not? Because it wasn't done by the United Nations. It was done by an organization with a different name. And this is what I'm talking about. The way the United Nations operates, like with its paper trail and its statements, it's the way that good white-collar criminals operate. They create shell corporations, shell organizations. They set up proxies, and they work through middlemen. They muddy the waters. Okay? So this report is called the Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. It's done by the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And you have to dig around a little bit to find out that the IPBES was established at the United Nations General Assembly in Bonn, Germany. Here you could go to unbonn.org just to see. IPBES serves as an interface between the scientific community and policymakers with the aim to strengthen the use of science in policy making. That sentence basically says, hey, we're here to make sure that what we're putting out with these scientists is used to push these agendas and make sure these governments do what the science is saying. Okay? And this platform was established in April 2012, and it's an independent intergovernmental body that is open to all member countries of the United Nations. IPBES was officially opened in the UN campus Bonn in July 2014. That's just to show you that this is the United Nations. And you see here, they have 3 different solutions, right, to mitigate and address this whole thing about the environment and the species being extinct. Sparing, sharing, and caring. Here, this is where they tell you the real shit. That the shit that you can't really find, that is so hard to find. You have to find the reports, you have to dig through it, you have to look up keywords, and then you'll see it. So, their first solution, intensive agriculture. This is about global technology, right? So they're talking about taking over all the agricultural land and then putting in their whatever is the new technology and AI and smart farming, if it's soybeans, I don't know. But the point is, it's control of food and water to manage that lifeline of energy. That's the first solution on the left here. International coordination, as they say, it's interdependence. It's regulation on top of regulation and making no one self-sufficient and everyone depending on cooperation, aka obedience, for survival. Okay, focus on optimal large-scale global technological solutions, such as intensive agriculture and a high level of international coordination. That's what they mean here. Okay. Second solution, decentralized solutions. This is the one with the Florida corridors, with the wildlife corridors. And this is where you find the mention of it. Agriculture is interwoven with natural corridors. And that's the point of natural corridors. You see it there at the bottom, this gray circle of reduce infrastructure expansion. They actually say it directly. That it's very small. You can barely, but they're admitting that it's to reduce infrastructure expansion, to reduce the amount that people can make, to make it harder to drive, to make it harder to get around, right? Directly stated. And the third solution directly states this stuff that is still, like, if you say this, people are not going to believe you. They're going to think you're stretching it. Like, oh, people love to say, I need to see some proof. If you can give me some proof, you need to prove that this is the case. I haven't seen any proof yet. Consumption change. Pathway with a focus on changes in human consumption patterns, most notably by limiting meat, reduce waste, and a less energy intensive and material intensive lifestyle. That used to be a conspiracy theory, right? That you're supposed to eat less. They want you to eat less to have more energy. Less energy intensive and material intensive lifestyle. They want you to have nothing, yeah? Not just a video by Klaus Schwab, but how about the actual reports, okay? Actually stated out there. You could link these people to this. You can take them to court for this. If people knew about this, these people could get put away in jail. They could be tried for treason. They could be hung in the streets legally. They could. And this report comes out in 2019. And days later, the Wildlife Corridors Conservation Act of 2019 was proposed. And in 2021, it passed the House of Representatives, of course, with bipartisan support. Here you could see 14 states have introduced wildlife legislation or issued executive orders. In 2021 alone, 3 states, Florida, Virginia, Colorado, right? That collaboration, last line, work together to collaboratively protect wildlife. So that's really the end. That should conclusively prove that wildlife corridors are a communist globalist scheme. Any attempt to control resources by the state is a step towards mass murder. History shows that to be the case. If you disagree with that, come on and debate me. I don't know if people know that. There's an open challenge all the time for anybody to come on and have a conversation. Anybody. Because this is, case closed, hands down, black and white. You try to argue this with me, you're going to look stupid. People need to get better at arguing this because the truth is on our side, right? You just need to be able to present it well. They can present it well because these guys are lifelong talkers. That's what it is. So it would be nice if we could talk and fight. Then we spank them anyway they want to. So I got some final and random thoughts, right? This is such extremist thinking, this environmentalism, They want to protect the Florida panther, right? The wild Florida panther. People put a bow tie on their dog and take them to dog shows and do all this stuff and buy sweaters for their cat. And they do that, but then they lose their minds over a wild panther having to see a smokestack or a highway. This is such detached thinking. It's like schizophrenic thinking. Saving the wild animals. Well, what about saving the cows and chickens? They're animals too. So this would be like neglecting your children and giving all your attention over to somebody else's children, right? Somebody else's child in another state while your baby is suffering and crying for food. So shouldn't we worry about our future children's habitat first? And then we worry about the animals? Because it's all, I get it. Like, okay, save the habitat for these animals, and I agree with that. I go out into the forest. I love birds and animals, and I don't want to disturb them. I'm not the type of guy that wants to pet everything. Okay, like I don't want to, put a bunny in my house and have them sit there just because bunnies are cute. Yeah, they should have their own habitat. So should we. And you should make sure you worry about your children's habitat, because that's fucking going away. Where's the human corridor? And I've been very alarmed with this obsession with the wild. So here's the story. I'm watching the Stanley Cup playoffs, okay? I love playoff hockey. It's a sport that embodies the principles of freedom and property. I mean, it's just the case. There's so much respect in this sport. People don't act like clowns. Every team shakes hands after each playoff series. So they go to war. They actually fight and hit each other, not like in basketball. And then after it ends, right in that moment, despite total heartbreak on one side and total exaltation and victory on the other side, they shake hands, every single guy down to the coaches, to every guy. No one avoids looking each other eye to eye, and people don't get away with cheap shots. Like if somebody makes a dirty play, it catches up to them. later in the game or in another game. Like, nobody forgets anything. They get it handed back to them. You know, it's a sport of justice. And if people have a problem, they drop the gloves and they fight with fists during the game. Only sport where that happens, you know, other than martial arts, but that's a different thing. And the referees let them fight. They'll wait. They'll only break it up when it gets, like, when somebody's on the floor, or like you know, if it's over. So they let them fight. They let them settle it out because they respect the players, and the players respect the referees more than any other sport I've ever seen. And it's not elitist. It's a very down-to-earth type of game, and the players have more liberty, freedom than in any other sport. And it's about property. You know, the goal crease, which is the goaltender's personal space, is highly treasured. So if any opposing player hangs out by the goalie, messes with the goalie, it's not tolerated. They get clobbered. You get your shit rocked. Get the fuck out of there. And it's addressed quickly. And they're tough people. So, you know, so I was looking at the Florida Panthers videos because Bobrovsky made this amazing save, and then Verhaeghe scored in playoff overtime winner again. And I'm looking up the Florida Panthers, and I see this video, Florida Panther makes a comeback. Yeah, that's how this show came together. It was a news feature where they talked about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. And I was like, whoa. The only person I've ever heard talk about wildlife corridors is Rosa Koire, who this show is fully and entirely dedicated to. Rosa was an amazing researcher, presenter, so courageous, and I think it should not be ignored that she died very unexpectedly in May of 2021. And you see this stuff passes 2019, 2021, these wildlife corridors, and she dies in May of 2021. She wrote a book called Behind the Green Mask. UN Agenda 21 is the title, which I just ordered last night, by the way. So anyway, I'm watching these games, you know, rest in peace to Rosa Koire. And I'm watching these games, and one of these commercials is for a show called Naked and Afraid. And I think this shit is disgusting. Like, it's some sort of perversion, like this reality TV era. People, they get naked and they go out into nature to act like tribesmen, you know, like, and you hear this sentiment from science to entertainment to music, you know, comedians. We're all just animals. Everybody's just animals. We are nothing but wild animals. No, we are not. We have only a base foundation of a wild animal. We have that so we could fall back on that when everything above the foundation crumbles. We're not wild animals, and we're not a virus either. We're not a virus spreading throughout the world and poisoning the planet, disturbing the planet. That's a Hitlerian, elitist point of view. And these Florida Corridor videos that I played, they're saying, in different words, people are cockroaches. That's what they're saying. They're saying we need a solution to their reproduction. Overpopulation, right? This is pest language. No, we're not a pest. We're not an invasive organism that destroys the planet. We're an organism that improves the planet, provided we behave within the right mindset. So I, myself, am not only in the right mindset, I'm in the hockey playoff mindset, which means I'm ready to block shots. I'm ready to hit. I'm ready to fight. So, you know, thank you for watching. Go Panthers. And I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
In this tournament, the chosen few shall be triumphant and the devil will be decapitated. So you can keep your ducats and your dresses. I won't be emasculated. In this world of scientific madness. Scientific madness. My status is the baddest.